Hello, everybody, and welcome to Atheist Sunday School, your one-stop shop for everything Atheist Sunday and school. And boy, do we have a show for you today. Today we are covering Hosea chapters 1 through 4. And we're finally done with Daniel.
Yeah, we are. And I just realized that light isn't on.
I'll get it.
Yeah, I know. The whole show is ruined now. Yeah.
What have you done, Lawrence?
I'm so sorry. I didn't notice. I was looking at some commentaries.
This is literally genocide.
We are actively fighting flooding water in the back.
True.
So we've got an excuse.
Yeah.
There was some flooding here apparently.
Well, there still is. I'm dealing with it.
Yeah, God broke his promise.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
How could he? Chris, you should take that up with the big guy.
I will. These 4 or 5, puddles that are in the basement are just slightly annoying. Fortunately, nothing like died or broke. So
Though the planet wasn't destroyed.
no one died and nothing was destroyed.
As far as we know.
Oh, that's anticlimactic.
Yeah.
All right, so today we're talking about Hosea. How great is that new book? And this one is definitely one of, if not the oldest book in the Bible.
What? No, that's Job.
Shut up, Ruben. So these sayings, many of which would probably go back to Hosea. Of course, as is expected in prophetic traditions and in textual traditions in general, there has been stuff added to it over time, including like the very first verse. In fact, there's in the Hermenia commentary, there is just a section on that first verse alone. So we are going to go over that, obviously. So how about we talk a little bit about Hosea? There's a nice little introduction to the book.
What books do you have? Because I have the King James Version of the Bible.
I have the English Standard Version of the Bible.
We also have the Robert Alter translation and commentary of the Hebrew Bible.
We have from Hermenia. This is by Hans Walter Wolff. It is his commentary and translation of Hosea.
Was it originally written in German?
Probably.
I bet.
Yes, it was. It was, in fact, originally written in German. We also have Erdmann's commentary on the Bible.
And we have the Holy Scriptures according to some Jews and the New King James Version of the Bible.
Yeah, we got lots of stuff here.
We also have an opportunity, now that we're starting a new book, to read from the New Interpreter's Bible Old Testament survey.
We can. You're right. I completely forgot that book existed.
Wow.
Yeah. So let me introduce the book a little bit. At least the commentary from Erdmann's here. So Hosea's prophetic ministry took place in the northern kingdom, broadly within the 3rd quarter of the 8th century BC. It is significant that there is no allusion in the book to the fall of the northern kingdom to the Assyrians in 721. One of Hosea's main concerns was the degenerate worship of the time, married by syncretistic tendencies, which led to the confusion of Yahweh with the Canaanite god Baal. Now, the reason, or one of the big reasons, why scholars do believe that a name that the Canaanite gods were in some way, many of their features were taken over by Yahweh, or I guess by the Israelites into to their God, was because of books like this. This book does give evidence for that. Now, of course, while the author is against such things, that is where the evidence points. So we have this association of gods like Baal or even like El, specifically to they're kind of worshiping Yahweh, but it's I guess it's an appropriation of some sorts.
Oh no.
Yeah, I know, right? So the prophet condemned the proliferation of the externals of worship, of altars and pillars, and the expense of faithful commitment to the covenant with Yahweh. He castigated the priests for their over-concentration on sacrificial rituals and their failure to instruct the people in Yahweh's law. His second main concern was the increasing social and political instability of the period. And I think this was under the reign of Jehu, I forget how it's supposed to be pronounced.
Yahoo.
Yeah, you could pronounce it that way. Violence and bloodshed disrupted society, and a series of palace revolutions and assassinations betrayed the tensions and corruption at court. The book of Hosea falls into two distinct parts, chapters 1 through 3 and 4 through 14. Chapters 1 through 3 encapsulate in compact form the message of the whole from judgment to salvation. They are, however, distinctive in their prominent use of feminine symbolism to represent apostate Israel, which is noticeably absent from the rest of the book. So I think we've talked about this a good amount on the show, how a name like El was once for the chief god of Canaan, but then later became a generic term for God. And with that, a lot of the imagery also got kind of drawn into the Yahweh idea.
And thank you for the $5 donation.
Yes, Tomek, thank you.
Suggesting we read 3rd Maccabees since it's not about the Maccabees. Well, that's an unfortunate naming convention, isn't it?
Yeah, there's an issue with that in the Ethiopian canon as well. The books of Maccabees are nothing like the books of Maccabees that we know.
Yeah, but we'll get to it.
Yeah, we will. Absolutely.
Eventually.
Absolutely.
Well, how about I tell you about the book of Hosea?
Oh, great.
You know what? Because there's marriage is a big theme in the book of Hosea. And there's not only the marriage between Hosea and his wife, which is a major theme, especially the first 3 chapters, but it parallels with Yahweh's marriage to the unfaithful wife.
Yeah, Israel.
Yep. Israel.
We do get a lot of that.
So horrible. But there's multiple sections. There's 3 sections, right? The first section concerns the husband-wife metaphor. That's the first 3 chapters. Then chapters 4 through 11, as the largest section, contain the bulk of Hosea's oracles against Israelite politics and the cult. And the third section, which is 12 through 14, is where the prophet interweaves the husband-wife metaphor and the rebellious son metaphor. Well, something that we should look out for. But primarily what we're going to be dealing with today is the husband-wife metaphor. Now, the authorship, it's very straightforward. Over 100 years of scholarship on the prophetic book reveals that not every saying or oracle in the work comes directly from the prophet himself.
Right.
Yeah.
I am assuming that similar to most of prophetic traditions, this also shares and it looks, from the reading that I was doing in the Hermenia commentary the other day, it does seem like while we can definitely trace many of these ideas and perhaps even some of the sayings to Hosea himself, it would seem like there was plenty of additions.
Yes, it says in here, earlier biblical scholarship tended to value what it saw as the ipsissima verba, or the authentic words of the prophet. Evidence of later editorial activity was regarded as secondary, not only chronologically, but also in theological importance. Recent critical studies, however, recognize the significance of later stages of the work. Those are the collectors and redactors. Hence, authorship of the book of Hosea is a complex matter that is still disputed. Many scholars insist that most of the book originated with the prophet Hosea. Others think that redactional activity was more extensive than previously thought. Relevant for the oracles of this 18th century BCE prophet are 3 major interpretive stages that can be detected in the book of Hosea. An 8th to 7th century BCE collection of the prophet's oracles, a 7th century BCE Deuteronomistic redaction during the time of Judean King Josiah, and a 6th century BCE Deuteronomistic redaction during the Babylonian exile. Whether one thinks that Hosea's original oracles were particularly influential for these later interpretive periods, or whether one maintains that redactors expanded Hosea's oracles during these later times with their own theologies, it is clear that these stages were critical in the book's formation. So there's
It seems like there are a few events that we should keep in mind for the historical setting as well.
yes.
So Hosea's initial activity coincides with the last years of Jeroboam II, presumably at least 5 years before the king's death, 747 or 46 BCE. Not only is the threat in 1:4 directed at the Jehu dynasty, but the entire chapter is also to be dated at the time of Jeroboam II.
And this would be a politically turbulent period after the peaceful rule of Jeroboam II, if it takes place between the last years of Jeroboam II and the 3 years before the fall of Israel to the Assyrians.
A second major period of Hosea's proclamation is linked with the crucial events of the Syro-Ephraimite War and the subjugation by Tiglath-Pileser III of extensive territory in Israel in the year 733. At that time, Hosea could look back upon a long series of palace revolts, political vacillation between Egypt and Assyria, Hoshea ben Elah's submission to Assyria, and payment of heavy tribute.
Yes, it says here that the monarchy was plagued by a number of assassinations. Of the 6 kings to ascend to the throne, all but one died violently. Corruption at court and partisan intrigue were rampant.
So it looks like with the political situation, even if they wanted to kind of come together and defend themselves against the Assyrians, they probably wouldn't be able to. So one of the things that I thought was really interesting was, we were talking earlier about how there's this polemical nature to the text against the gods of Canaan and the polytheism of the ancient Israelites at this point in time.
Yes, and there is quite a bit of detail here talking about cultic turmoil that becomes a focus in Hosea.
And then henotheism afterwards. But
yeah. So there's the matter of Canaanite religion infecting the religion of the area. But recent scholarship calls into question this notion of Canaanite infiltration of a pure Yahwism. Monotheism was not always practiced in Israel. The monotheistic theology represented in the book of Hosea eventually became normative for Israel. In their formative stages, however, Israel's diverse religious beliefs and practices were influenced by those of other cultures. There's also some detail in here about Baal worship, which I suppose becomes more important in the book of Hosea. It says that worship of Baal, once a legitimate part of Israel's religion, now stands condemned by the book of Hosea.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of like a divine competitor kind of thing. It happens often. I mean, it's not like everywhere in the Bible, but there are plenty of hints that, this kind of like my God's better than your God kind of thing.
Yeah, there's some stuff here about Canaanite religion. It says, although worship of Canaanite deities was most likely a long-established practice in ancient Israel, Canaanite religious rituals are very difficult to reconstruct on the basis of the biblical witness alone.
Yeah.
Because of its increasing polemic against that religion, the biblical text presents biased and even distorted pictures of Canaanite rites. One alleged Canaanite practice that is specifically relevant to the book of Hosea is so-called cultic prostitution. We have learned much about Canaanite mythology from the Ras Shamra tablets, discovered some 50 years ago.
That's Ugarit, by the way.
Yep, on the coast of Syria. According to these tablets, the storm god Baal was killed by Mot, god of barrenness and death. In its pre-scientific milieu, this myth explained the hot, dry period between May and September when no rain fell on the land. Baal's sister lover, the goddess Anat, came to the rescue by slaying Mot and bringing Baal back to life. Their passionate sexual intercourse, the Canaanites believed, initiated the rainy season that began in October. Many scholars think that this mythic drama of death and renewed life was rehearsed every year in a religious New Year festival that took place in the fall, even though the festival itself is not described in the Rosh Hashanah tablets. Supposedly part of the festival was a sacred marriage, imitating Baal and Anat, during which Canaanite men from the king on down had ritual sex with cultic prostitutes in order to ensure fertility in the land. The religious intent behind these fertility cults was very serious indeed, nothing less than the survival of the people in a hostile climate. Human nature being of a piece, however, some worshippers may have frequented these cultic prostitutes for less than religious reasons.
As we all do.
What?
Right, guys? Am I right? Oh.
So they talk about these cultic prostitutes going in like full-scale orgies, and that's
something.
that could be part of what they are talking about in the book of Hosea.
Wow.
There's all these different periods of time. There's the period of the collector, 721 BCE. The prophet Hosea's predictions came true. But so the collector puts together this collection of Hosea's sayings, I guess. And then there's a Josianic redactor, and that goes on for some time, insisting on the worship of one God.
Yeah, and I'm sure that throughout these, I should say this and these at the same time, throughout this text, I am sure that we will get plenty of commentary on redactions or potential redactions.
Yes. There's also the period of the exilic redactor, and this was composed during the exile, obviously. And that has themes that are relevant later on.
Yeah,
in various sections of the book, not just in one place either.
Yeah, and one of the things I was actually trying to get to this earlier, but because of the association of all these of a god like Baal, and how the Israelites were at least they were pretty syncretic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So early on, it would have been kind of a natural thing, and it was really like Hosea would have been an outlier here in his view. So one of the things that we should note is he uses the divine name Yahweh way more often than he just says God. And when he does say God, he usually says that it is Yahweh, like your God Yahweh, my God Yahweh. So he does use the divine name quite often, just to make very sure that they knew which God they were talking about.
So there's an in-depth thing here about ancient Israelite marriage, but I think that we have a pretty good idea about that already. And it's come up before.
It has, yes.
The Song of Solomon.
that was quite a read.
Yeah.
Although I'm sure that was probably just more about general sex than it was about or just some very sexual relationship, not necessarily marriage.
Yes, but it says here in the conclusion of their piece that the book of Hosea transforms the marriage of a husband to a promiscuous wife into a heuristic vehicle for the covenantal relationship between God and Israel. For modern readers, however, several interpretive problems become evident. In the first place, the metaphor conflates the deity and the human husband. God is cast as an all-forgiving male. The divine becomes a male, and inevitably the male becomes divine. Second, the sinful is embodied in the image of a licentious wife. As is typical in ancient Israelite culture, the female is considered the primary offender in adulterous affairs. In this covenantal metaphor, woman becomes the ultimate transgressor and epitome of evil as an adulteress and a whore. Third, the metaphor comes perilously close to sanctioning a husband's domestic violence against his wife.
Whoa.
The explicit punishment of the wife/Israel by God for her own good arises out of God's steadfast love in order to make her see reason.
Oh, no.
As scholars point out, Hosea 1 and 3 do not provide any particulars of friction between Hosea and Gomer.
No, don't beat your wife. Stop.
Instead,
man, it's not worth it.
The flanking the narrative of God's marriage in Hosea 2, the story of their marriage are stereoscoped with the stormy relations between God and Israel. Hosea 3 implies what Hosea 2 describes in vivid detail, the physical abuse of Gomer in Hosea's attempts to love his adulterous wife into reason. Modeling the behavior of God towards Israel, Hosea isolates Gomer from her lovers. He offers Gomer gifts just as God offers gifts to Israel. He ultimately makes a heroic effort to abstain from sex with Gomer during this period. Very heroic. What is not explicitly stated is that Hosea, like God, beats his wife into submission. If God's behavior is the model for Hosea, the battering is implied, but not articulated.
Oh, no.
All right. So it's not articulated. So I guess
What's that?
That one's
incriminating question that you can ask about beating wives.
Oh yeah. When did you stop beating your wife?
Yeah, that one. Jose, come on, man.
Okay. So I mean, when we get to that, I guess we'll see how closely it parallels Yahweh's saving grace. I guess, right?
Treatment of Israel.
Yeah. Either way, that was pretty much the basic introduction to this text, and we can hop into it whenever, actually.
All right. You know, all this stuff about Judeo-Christian morals, values, it's stuff like don't race mix, beat your wives.
There's certainly a lot of that, and
spare the rod, spoil the child.
Most Christians I know definitely don't act like that.
As far as you know.
Well, yeah. I mean, not to say that they don't exist, because they absolutely do. I've heard plenty of horror stories about that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, the morality that has been presented is not very good.
No, not even slightly. But
Here comes more of that.
Hosea only beats her because he really cares.
Right. That's just that's well. I mean, like it said in the commentary, if it's not explicit, you can leave it open to interpretation.
But it's pretty heavily implied.
We'll see how closely it mirrors Yahweh's treatment of Israel.
All right, you want me to hop into?
Sure, we can hop into it. But that is pretty much how Yahweh treated Israel.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sure. Like we read in the commentary, it doesn't actually say that.
Right. But it is implied.
If it's mirroring
God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, either way.
Also, I like how today you have the long reading.
Another one?
My chapter 1 is 11 verses. Chapter 2 is 23 verses. Chapter 3 is 5 verses.
Whoa.
And chapter 4 is 19 verses.
All right, then. Yeah, I mean, these are fairly short
pretty
chapters.
Short, actually.
Yeah.
I guess I'm glad we had this long discussion, and we will clarify that there is no direct instance where he says that he hits her.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. But
what was the room or whatever? I did not hit her. You get it, Ruben.
I didn't hit her. It's bullshit. I did not.
What's that a reference to?
The Room.
The Room?
Never seen that.
You've never seen The Room?
I haven't.
Good.
Go watch The Room. We're pausing the broadcast.
Oh my god.
Holy shit. It's pretty important.
Yeah. You can watch The Room afterwards. It should be easy to find. Anyways, chapter 1. The word of the Lord that came unto Hosea, the son of Beeri, in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, and in the days of Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel.
Yeah, so we have this superscription here. The author of this superscription, a collector of prophetic tradition, probably belonged to Judaic circles since he gives preeminence to the Davidic dynasty. He has used ancient data that have not been preserved elsewhere. Otherwise, how might he have known the name of Beeri, Hosea's father, which never again appears in the book of Hosea? I mean, yeah, sure, that makes sense. That Jeroboam the second is the only Israelite king mentioned here. Not. Oh, okay, I see what he's doing.
Also, Jeroboam the second
time.
was contemporary only with Uzziah.
Right. So that Jeroboam II is the only Israelite king mentioned here also suggests that he used a pre-existing source. Unlike the kings of Judah noted here, he provides us with the name of Jeroboam's father. This is not of great significance, since he must distinguish between Jeroboam, the son of Joash, and Jeroboam the first, the son of Nebat. Of decisive importance, however, is that the list of the Judean kings extends far beyond the death of Jeroboam II, which probably coincided with the death of Uzziah of Judah. The Judaic redactor apparently intended to indicate a longer period of time than did the source that provided him with both the names of the Israelite king and Hosea's father Beeri. So did his source bear a superscription containing both of these names? If so, this source could not have included the complete literary tradition of Hosea's sayings, since many of them unquestionably originated during that period of disorder when one king was followed quickly by another. Of course, the whole period of assassinations and stuff.
Tons of assassinations.
Yeah.
So I'm going to continue.
Sure.
The beginning of the word of the Lord by Hosea. And the Lord said to Hosea, Go take unto thee a wife of whoredoms and children of whoredoms, for the land hath committed great whoredom, departing from the Lord.
Yeah, so he is told here specifically to go find a wife that's a whore, right?
Right, and Eerdmans comments that this could be a reference to finding a wife who is literally a prostitute, or could be foreshadowing of her behavior later on.
Yeah. And, of course, if it weren't for the rest of the context, it could be interpreted as, whoring after other gods, but because of the context, it's not that.
Mm-hmm. We're going to have a lot more details about Hosea's wife than Ezekiel's wife.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Remember that one time you had a wife? Good time.
Yeah, good time. One.
Yep.
Time.
The good time.
Singular. Okay. So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, which conceived and bare him a son. And the Lord said unto him, Call his name Jezreel, for yet a little while, and I will avenge the blood of Jezreel upon the house of Jehu, and will cause to cease the kingdom of the house of Israel.
Jezreel was it was the city, right? That was also the name of the city?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it shall come to pass at that day that I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel. So there's a valley of Jezreel.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the naming here. So it would be an unusual name. So the name Jezreel, otherwise used for a place or region, must have caused lively public discussion. With such a provocative riddle, Hosea's prophetic ministry began, which was in the year 750 at the latest. It is not surprising that the misgivings elicited by the growing boy named Jezreel later on evoked new responses from Hosea regarding the meaning of the name. According to the narrator, Yahweh's commission to name the child included at the same time the name's first interpretation in verse 4b, since since the name Jezreel, which is used as a catchword in Hosea's preaching, is inseparably linked with a person, the shadow of the original words is projected into the future.
Also, it says here in Erdman's, the symbolic naming of Hosea's first son, Jezreel, conveys both accusation and judgment. It alludes to the massacre at Jezreel, by which Jehu came to the throne of Israel in 2 Kings 9 through 10.
Apparently means God sows. Yeah, Matthew got it right. Yep. He already had it. Chat was already ahead of us.
Well done, chat.
Yep. So, Jezreel. And she conceived again and bare a daughter. And God said unto him, call her name Loruhamah, for I will no more have mercy upon the house of Israel, but I will utterly take them away. Now, but I will have mercy upon the house of Judah, and will save them by the Lord their God, and will not save them by bow, nor by sword, nor by battle, by horses, nor by horsemen. Now, when she had weaned Loruhamah, she conceived and bare a son. Then said God, call his name Lo-Ami, for ye are not my people, and I will not be your God.
So the translation that I have is no mercy. Yeah, call her name No Mercy.
No mercy.
Yeah, so the form of the name is a negated perfect. She finds no mercy. But who is the subject of this sentence, i.e., who is not to receive Yahweh's mercy? In analogy to other related symbolical names, the answer is not to be found in the child herself, even though this confusingly suggests itself in this very case. The question would then arise how a father could so name his child as though he intended to withhold his care and affection from her during her entire life. With regard simply to its form, a negated sentence usually does not function as a name. The context gives the subject, as the land receives no mercy, which in verse 2 is the main premise for this threat too. The feminine passive verb form, however, is probably to be understood as impersonal and translated there is no mercy, so that for the name we translate without mercy.
Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said unto them, ye are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, ye are the sons of the living God. Then shall the children of Judah and the children of Israel be gathered together, and appoint themselves one head, and they shall come up out of the land, for great shall be the day of Jezreel.
And that was verse
11. That's the end.
Okay, you just finished verse 11. Yeah. So obviously, very, very short chapter there. This is sectioned off by itself. Those last two verses, I believe, actually, along with the first verse of the next chapter as well. So the peculiar linguistic style of this passage raises the question of its origin. The very first sentences appear to be non-Hosean, and starting with verse 10, by the way, appear to be non-Hosean, not only because of their detailed prolixity, but especially because of their passive construction. What seems most unusual is that in comparison with other salvation speeches in Hosea, the I of Yahweh in the active voice completely recedes, while the subject in each verse is the people. Moreover, the idea of a reunion of Israel and Judah under one head recalls Ezekiel 37:15. Thus, it has been supposed that the author belonged in the exilic period. In particular, the last sentence in verse 2 has been interpreted as a reference to the return from the exile. Finally, it has been considered unlikely that Hosea would reinterpret the names of his children as given in chapter 1. Had he done this at all, then it would be recorded in several instances in which case the reinterpretation in verse 2:1 would differ from verse 2:23 and 25.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the end of the first chapter. If you're enjoying the stream so far, give us a like, comment, subscribe, share it with your friends, family, neighbors, all over the place. We're going to continue on now to chapter 2, assuming Lawrence here.
Ready to say some more stuff.
Yeah, I absolutely am. So I'm just letting you know that the last verse here, this one, it has verse 3, but it's actually 2:1, and then it goes back to normal-ish.
Okay.
Yeah, because of the division, I suppose. Yeah, and here's this as well.
All right.
Yeah, great. So getting started here with chapter 2. So let's see. The title here is Israel's Unfaithfulness Punished. And so here's why actually. So there's a note here at the very beginning of chapter 2. 2:1. Yeah, so it's it continues in the Hebrew. It's different. The verse division is different, so that's why. So unless there's something you want to do to introduce chapter 2, all right, I can just get started here. Say to your brothers, you are my people, and to your sisters, you have received mercy.
Yep. So these brothers and sisters probably would be first of all the neighboring Judeans, just as the name Jezreel allows for various emphases and meaning. Now the new aspect of brotherhood is derived from the symbol of the prophet's family. So we're about to get into it. And
yeah, it looks like this is a poem or a speech or something that's coming up.
Also, Alter's version is numbered very differently. The beginning of chapter 2 for Altar is verse 10 of chapter 1.
Yeah, just like I mentioned, because in the Hebrew it's different.
Yeah. So very different. And we're about to get into some stuff. This is like a poem that began here. Altar has it in verse form. Like not just biblical verses, but the actual verse.
Yeah, I also have the verses as well.
Okay.
It seems like it just is that way. And I think for the commentary for this would start on the next page then.
Yep.
I'm guessing.
No.
Well, the next section.
Yes.
Okay. So anyways, continuing on with chapter 2 here. Plead with your mother, plead, for she is not my wife, and I am not her husband, that she put away her whoring from her face and her adultery from between her breasts. Oh my God.
Yeah, so it takes on the language of a court case because she's committed adultery and so deserves to be hauled before a judge. Obviously, the punishment for adultery is death. When it says her adultery from between her breasts, this is a parallel metonymy. She has put a sachet of fragrance between her breasts, compare the Song of Songs 113, to make herself more alluring to her lovers.
Yeah, I remember Song of Songs. That was a fun one.
Yeah.
Lest I strip her naked and make her as in the day she was born. What?
She was naked when she was born.
Well, yeah, sure. But like, okay, so he's very angry and he's gonna just strip her naked to get rid of that stuff, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Or threatening to. And make her like a wilderness and make her like a parched land and kill her with thirst.
Well,
are we talking about like abstaining from sex here? Is that what we're going for?
You did it.
It says, I will turn her into a desert. The prophet switches from one series of images, Israel as a promiscuous female body, to another, the barren desert, as a representation of national ruin.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It doesn't sound good on paper, let me tell you.
Well, the accusations in verse 5 relate not to Gomer's situation, but to the nation's devotion to Baal as guarantor of its material prosperity. Since this is poetry, logical consistency is not to be expected. The children are in one instance ordered to call their mother to account, and at another they are regarded as guilty by association. Thus, the prophet's thought moves between the nation as individual responsible for recognizing the community's sin and the people as a guilty entity.
So continuing on here with verse 4. Upon her children also I will have no mercy, because they are children of whoredom. Yeah, there's the guilt by association. For their mother has played the whore. She who conceived them has acted shamefully. For she said, I will go after my lovers, who gave me my bread and my water, my wool and my flax, my oil and my drink. And of course, that being verse 5, that's the material wealth, I would suppose.
Well, Zeev Wiesman aptly notes that there's a progression here from the basic elements of food and drink to the materials needed to clothe the body to the more luxurious substances used to gratify the body and make it attractive. The last word here, rendered by some as drink, means balm in Proverbs 3:8, and unguents seems right for this context. He says, my oil and my unguents.
Wow. Okay. Therefore, I will hedge up her way with thorns, and I will build a wall against her so that she cannot find her paths.
So, I mean, the things that she says here are related to aspects of the Canaanite cult.
The whole thing about I will go after my lovers.
Yeah. Bread and water, wool and flax, oil and balm, right? These are presumably things that are given to the cultic prostitutes. And, of course, that's no good.
Thanks, Sonic.
Yeah, and I will build a wall against her so that she cannot find her paths. She shall pursue her lovers, but not overtake them, and she shall seek them, but shall not find them. Then she shall say, I will go and return to my first husband, for it was better for me. For it was better than me then than now.
So this line should be taken together with the preceding one.
Yeah.
Her way is blocked with bristles and thorns, and she cannot see where she should go. Desperately running after her lovers, she finds herself lost and trapped. All this leads her to the realization expressed in the next line that she was better off with her husband.
Yeah, she just wants to go home.
Yeah. She's like, I'll play the wild rover no more, eh? Right? This is basically the only bit where, well, there's a couple of times where she says things, like in verse 7 in here, right? Where she's like, let me go after my lovers and stuff.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the actual, like, court proceedings, like the language that's used in a legalistic manner, she doesn't speak.
Right.
Throughout the indictment, the woman is voiceless. She has no opportunity to state her case. Her words are mediated by the injured husband. The symbolism which represents the unfaithful nation as adulteress is characteristic of the patriarchal perspective of the Old Testament. Right?
I mean, absolutely. He's putting words in her mouth. Let's say that.
Yeah.
Of course, this is all like an imaginary court case, right? Where this
is like if someone brings you to court and they're like the prosecution, and then they also act as your defense attorney.
Yeah. And the jury.
Yep.
And she did not know that it was I who gave her the grain, the wine, and the oil, and who lavished on her silver and gold. Yeah, and who lavished on her silver and gold, which they used for Baal. So yeah, it seems okay. So if we have this parallel here, this does seem, very obviously that it's paralleling Hosea's wife
Mhm.
and Hosea with Israel and Yahweh. So in the same way that this is playing out here, Israel strayed, and then Yahweh was all like, but I gave you that good stuff because I'm Yahweh, and you are going after all these other nations and these other gods, and they're giving you nothing. They're just being horrible to you.
Yeah, and like they build idols for Baal using all this silver and gold, and it's
or just like for sacrifices and stuff like that.
Mhm. Waste of silver and gold, by the way.
Therefore, I will take back my grain in its time, and my wine in its season, and I will take away my wool and my flax, which were to cover her nakedness. Now I will uncover her lewdness in the sight of her lovers, and no one shall rescue her out of my hand. So, if it's paralleling,
her lewdness is equivalent to her shame of her nakedness.
Yeah. So this is I kind of see the hints of at least in poetic nature the beating of a wife.
Yeah. Well,
no one shall rescue her out of my hand. That doesn't sound good. Like I know this is symbolic.
Yeah.
But yeah. And I will put an end to all her mirth, her feasts, her new moons, her Sabbaths, and all her appointed feasts. Now, of course, if we, since we have read most of this book so far, rescuing someone out of Yahweh's hand, no one rescuing someone out of Yahweh's hand is when Yahweh is getting retribution on Israel. So Israel, lusts after other gods, and God is like, you know what? I'm going to send Babylon to destroy you or something. And no one will rescue you. So like that is what that means.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no more feasts and all that stuff. And I will lay waste her vines and her fig trees, of which she said, these are my wages, which my lovers have given me. I will make them a forest, and the beasts of the field shall devour them. And I will punish her for the feast days of the Baals. When she burned offerings to them and adorned herself with her ring and jewelry, and went after her lovers and forgot me, declares the Lord.
So the Baals, this is the Baalim.
Yeah.
Right? It's probably a reference to
Lords.
the festival days when the Baalim were worshipped. Now, here in Hermenia, they note, Hosea for the first time refers to Israel's lovers by the name of Baals. Is the plural indicative of numerous Baal divinities? Or does it merely derive from the imagery of adulterous relations with other men? Now, the Baal divinities, the assumption that the Canaanite religion knew an immense number of various localized Baals is incorrect. In Ugarit in northern Syria, during the middle of the second millennium BC, we find Baal represented as a king of the gods. He is son of Dagon, the god of grain, and appears as the immanent divinity, while El, the father of the gods, was considered a high god. Concerning the relationship of El's kingship to kinship, no, it's kingship, to Baals, there's a reference.
Well, I still think the local one would still work, where they have patron deities. So while yes, it is accurate that that at some point in time in Canaanite mythology, Baal pretty much in practice usurped El. There are still plenty of representations of localized cults. all in the name of Baal, but they were different ones.
Well, it goes on to say the conclusion that Hosea did have a number of Baals in mind is unavoidable if we take only the Old Testament into consideration. In addition to the ancient Baal Berith of Shechem, there is the Baal of Samaria, the Baal of Carmel, Baal-zebub of Ekron, and Baal of Hermon. Concerning Baal of Tabor and Baal of Peor, there are other references that all these easily could become identified as one does not alter the fact that they originally, and this applies to the religious practices in Hosea's time, must be distinguished from Baal Samem. Yep. Hence the plural.
Okay.
But Baalim is also a generic term for foreign deities.
Yeah. Oh, this is great. Therefore, behold!
Behold!
I will allure her and bring her into the wilderness and speak tenderly to her. And there I will give her her vineyards and make the valley of Achor a door of hope.
The Hebrew Achor suggests trouble, but the bright future, but in the bright future, this very place with its dark associations will become the entranceway to hope.
And there she shall answer, as in the days of her youth, as at the time when she came out of the land of Egypt.
It says answer. Alter's translation is sing out, as in the days of her youth. The Hebrew verb also means to answer, but a clearly attested sense is to speak out or to sing out. That is the compelling sense here. The third verset, which invokes the moment of Exodus from Egypt, probably means to make us recall the Song of the Sea that Moses and Miriam sing to celebrate God's triumphs over Egypt.
That would make sense, yeah. As in that day, declares the Lord, you will call me my husband, and no longer will you call me my Baal.
Also, the location of the Valley of Achor is disputed. There's suggestions that it's a bunch of different rivers, but nothing is for sure.
For I will remove the names of the Baals. Oh my God.
You'll remove the name of the Baals?
Hold on. Okay. I will remove the names of the Baals from her mouth. Removing balls from her mouth. That's funny. We're children here, but
Yes.
that's pretty funny.
Wow.
But I want to point out, it says, she shall call me my husband and no longer call me my Baal.
Yeah.
Well, this line turns on an untranslatable pun.
Oh.
Baal is one of two Hebrew words for husband, but it is also the name of the principal Canaanite deity.
That's good. I like that wordplay.
Yep.
And they shall be remembered by name no more. And I will make for them a covenant on that day with the beasts of the field, the birds of the heavens, and the creeping things on the ground. And I will abolish the bow, the sword, and war from the land. And I will make you lie down in safety. And I will betroth you to me forever. I will betroth you to me in righteousness and in justice, in steadfast love and in mercy. I will betroth you to me in faithfulness, and you shall know the Lord.
So I want to point out a little aside that is in here. What verse did you just finish?
Just finished verse 20.
Okay. Well, there's an aside here about Yahweh as Baal. It says the Israelite names prevalent at the time can serve as an illustration of this. The words Yahweh and Baal occurred together, functioning as elements that signified the respective divine names. Already in the earliest period of the monarchy, two of Saul's sons were named Jonathan and Eshbaal, and Also, among David's sons were Adoniah and Shephatiah, together with Beeliada, and the Sumerian ostraca, probably dating from the 3rd decade of the 8th century. There are 10 names formed on the word Baal, with 11 formed on Yahweh. The former occurs more frequently among lower classes.
I think I covered the Sumerian ostraca in the Golden Calf video.
Oh.
I think it was that one.
Well, the papyri from the Judean military colony Elephantine on the Nile Peninsula, 5th century, provide an unequivocal example of the Baalization of Yahweh. Here, with the name of Yahweh, we find the name of the goddess Anathbethel, or Anathyahu, and a third divinity, Ishumbethel. It appears that this group of Jews in Egypt practiced this kind of syncretism against which Hosea speaks. Yahweh is combined with a goddess, as Baal is with Anath and Ugarit. In view of this, the form of address my Baal might be understood as an element of the cultic representation of a sacral marriage. So, some things about Yahweh and Baal. As we know, they have sibling rivalry.
Don't we all?
Yeah.
No?
What?
No siblings.
Yeah, I know.
Neither of you have siblings.
You don't either. You have half siblings, if anything.
It's the same thing.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know.
Oh, you know,
have
we
siblings.
could stay here all day and talk about that, but we're not going to. So let's continue on here. Verse 21. And in that day I will answer, declares the Lord. I will answer the heavens, and they shall answer the earth. And the earth shall answer the grain, the wine, and the oil. And they shall answer Jezreel. And I will sow her for myself in the land, and I will have mercy on no mercy.
Yeah, so I will sow her. This declaration, a single Hebrew word, immediately follows Jezreel at the end of the previous line, Yisrael Uzer Athya, and is so clearly a play on the etymology of the name, which means God will sow. The very valley that in the first chapter was associated with crimes because of all the blood that was shed there is now to live up to its name by becoming a place of fecund growth.
So that verse, especially, and I guess the verse before it too, just a lot of wordplay.
Yes.
There's have mercy on no mercy. Of course, that was the daughter from before. And I will say, yeah, here's the other name, but it's translated here. So I will say to not my people, you are my people. And he shall say, you are my God.
There you go. That is what was implied earlier as well. And now, do you hear something?
I do actually hear something.
Wow.
At a perfect time for me to cough. Amazing.
Tinnitus.
Behold, I am your Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and I want to let all you heathens and sinners know that I support this wonderful episode of Atheist Sunday School. Lawrence and Reuben try their very best to bring you the true glory of the Bible, and they need your help. They have provided links to their Patreon page and other social media just for you. Once again, my name is Jesus Christ, and this is Milwaukee Atheists. The Lord is with them. God bless.
Oh my God, Jesus Christ! Thank you for stopping by and showing so much support for us. We really appreciate that. And it seems like once again you have taken Reuben away. Maybe he will come back after his ascension, as is tradition. But before that, I want to remind everybody, if you guys are enjoying this show, make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't. The likes actually really do help us, because if there is more engagement, the video shows up more in suggested feeds. So more likes equals more views. Pretty much the more people engage, the more people will show up.
Thanks to those of you who have donated. We're not entirely sure if we have a specific drive going, but since we haven't had one going, we've had an amount donated anyways, and we're up to 2 cents under $40 by my math.
Oh, that's nice. That's
which I
nice.
actually have kept track of.
Yes. So thank you, everybody.
Yes, mostly Tom or Tompkin.
Tomic, I think.
Tomic?
Yeah.
Mostly Tomic. He's our last $15 to like $30 donation.
Yeah, but I absolutely thank you to anyone who's been donating. All right, so oh my God.
That guy who's going to read 5 lines is back.
I've returned.
Yeah, how was your revelation?
Well, I've received a true revelation, and that is that God apparently wants you to beat your wife.
Oh,
Oh no.
So step 1, get a wife.
Yep. As she has to be a whore.
Oh.
Man.
Yep. You
Nice.
need nice. You're getting someone who's got some skills to pay the
Great.
bills.
Let's go.
Right. And then even though you knew she was a whore, you have to get mad at her for being a whore.
What?
Apparently, yeah. I got to do that. Make sure to treat other people like shit. That was sarcasm. If anyone is
Not a false prophet.
He's a hyperbolic prophet.
Nope. This is totally true prophecy. This is my direct revelation.
It was right there.
Yep.
All right, so we are hopping into an incredibly short chapter here, chapter 3.
Yeah, what do you have to say about this incredibly short chapter?
I guess there is some stuff to say about it. Yeah, right? Isn't that weird? So, pretty much the very first question that is asked about this chapter is, can this chapter be considered an original unit? Does verse 5 not treat a theme which is foreign to the previous verses and therefore appear to be connected loosely and perhaps secondarily by, afterwards? It says by thereafter, but that's just a weird way to put that. And then he talks about how weird the actual chapter is in connection to the rest of it. Verse 4, however, is not merely connected with verse 3 in a superficial manner. The 3 accented words at the beginning of verse 4 refer back to the vocabulary of verse 3. So yeah, this is basically an argument for the unity, it looks like.
Yeah, Eerdmans notes, the relationship between chapters 1 and 3 has been subject of much discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Here the woman is unnamed. Is she Gomer or not? The text is intentionally vague and provides no definitive answer. On balance, however, the former seems the more likely, since the NIV's interpretive rendering, go show your love to your wife again. The problem of identifying the woman is a salutary reminder that the book's primary concern is not the prophet's personal life, but the Lord's message to his people Israel. In one respect, however, chapter 3 is less ambiguous than chapter 1. The woman is openly described as an adulteress, an entirely different expression from the circumlocution
There you go.
of 1:2. Whereas the first symbolic action represented Israel's unfaithfulness, this second symbolic act represents the persistence of Yahweh's love in the face of rejection. The word love occurs 4 times in 3:1, twice of faithful and twice of illicit love. Hosea's love versus a lover's, and Yahweh's love versus Israel's love of raisin cakes. Although these were an acceptable food, in this context they have cultic implications, hence the explanatory description as sacred and offered to idols. It was in response to the command to love that Hosea bought the woman from prostitution But this love appears at first in a strange guise, manifesting itself not in an affectionate welcome, but in restraint on the part of both parties for many days, the necessary discipline of commitment. The end of Hosea's story is not told, nor is any hint given whether a loving permanent relationship was subsequently established. The focus of the narrative is solely on Israel's future, deprived of the traditional leaders of society and of familiar religious institutions. Yet in the light of 3:1, all this is to be understood as the outworking of a love which guarantees the future. The nature of this future is then spelled out. It involves commitment to Yahweh and to the Davidic king. The inclusion of a reference to the Davidic line is often regarded as secondary, or added by a redactor. Yet, arguably, it is integral to Hosea's message, since its combination of the political and of the religious forms a parallel to the previous verse, whereas the symbolic acts of chapter 1 signified the ultimate rupture of the covenant relationship. The present chapter offers the prospect of a return to the Lord and to his goodness.
Yeah, it looks like, just kind of looking ahead here, this looks like an unhealthy relationship.
Yeah, you know what?
Just saying. And apparently the genre of this kind of thing is pointed out here. So this combination of an account with an interpretation belongs to the special genre of accounts on the prophet's symbolic actions. These accounts, together with the call accounts, can be considered to belong to the basic literary genre called the memorable.
Oh. You know what? Let's take this Yahweh and Israel marriage metaphor for a bit. You know, think about what happens to Israel and to Judah.
Yeah, it's not great.
And
it's actually bad.
Especially to Jerusalem, right? Where Yahweh specifically commands an army of foreign men to invade her.
Okay. I mean, yes.
There's a lot of annoying.
Although I think that is taking the metaphor a little too far, but yes.
Yeah. And then they ravage everything. You know, Yahweh would be a really shitty husband, wouldn't he?
Yes. You know, there's a reason why the metaphor has often been made that God was like a shitty boyfriend.
Definitely abusive.
Yeah, it's not good. And reading ahead here, it reads of a very unhealthy relationship.
And you know, that is the implication, right? That was mentioned earlier, is that Hosea's marriage is supposed to be modeled on Yahweh's marriage to the land, right? And holy shit, man. If there's someone you don't want to model your marriage after.
Also, humans aren't land.
True.
In case anyone needs a reminder of that.
Because you can plow land, guys.
Oh my God. I don't think anyone here is like beating their spouses or their loved ones. I don't think they are. But if you are, remember that they're not land.
Yeah. So let's read chapter 3. Let's get this relationship advice from Yahweh. Then the Lord said unto me, Go yet, love a woman beloved of her friend, yet an adulteress, according to the love of the Lord toward the children of Israel, who look to other gods and love flagons of wine. All right, so there he's telling her to beat the shit out of her. According to the love that he shows to Israel, right? What happens to Israel? Well, we know what happens to Israel. It gets decimated.
Go love a woman beloved by a companion, yet an adulteress, like the love of God for the Israelites when they turn to other gods, and to lovers of the and to lovers of cups of the grape.
Yeah, which, you know, cultic wine.
Yeah.
But moreover, like, you know how Yahweh treats
the children of
Israel who turn to other gods.
Yeah, not great.
No, not great at all. In fact, there's a lot of murder that happens.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
Extreme negligence.
Yeah, extreme negligence. This is horrible advice.
Yeah, the love of okay. So here's some more on this section. The love of God is undeserved love, for those loved by Him are characterized immediately in a concessive nominal clause, as in love with someone else. Quote, turning to other gods is a genuine Hosean reproach. It's referenced a whole bunch of times. Hosea apparently knows the Decalogue and therefore knows the term other gods. Well, I don't know. I guess in the Hebrew it would be the same, it looks like, which does not... Oh, okay, so apparently it doesn't appear in Amos, Isaiah, and Micah. Again, Hosea's relationship to Deuteronomy becomes all the more evident. He lists off a whole bunch of Deuteronomistic phrases that occur throughout the text. Amos, Isaiah, and Micah, moreover, know nothing of the love of Yahweh, although it is found in Deuteronomy. After this... I don't know if he would know about the Decalogue necessarily. Perhaps the ideas of Hosea influence the Decalogue, is what I would say is probably more likely. I don't know. It's tough to kind of track those kinds of traditions. But it's a tough call on that one. So after this, it appears again only in Malachi 1:2. So that's mostly on the textual thing. Yahweh's love finds no response. Quote, and love should not be interpreted as a second attribute of God's, but rather as a second predicate to they. Okay. Therefore, it is not the other gods who love the cakes of raisins, but the Israelites themselves, since the woman who loves a friend is meant to correspond to Israel.
So,
yeah.
This next verse here, I found something interesting. Now, keep in mind that Judas in the New Testament, when he sells Jesus out, right, he receives a payment of 30 pieces of silver. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here, Hosea is buying his wife, right? It says, so I bought her to me for 15 pieces of silver and for a homer of barley and a half homer of barley.
Yeah, so it's the silver plus some other stuff. But
yeah. And we might be able to conclude that there is an equivalent value between this homer and a half of barley and 15 pieces of silver.
We could, but also remember that according to Leviticus, how much did it cost to buy somebody? Although was that specifically slaves?
Yeah, that was specifically slaves.
Okay.
But also...
It was half as much.
Yeah. Also, keep in mind that the story with Judas and Jesus takes place...
Way later.
Yeah. And there's inflation. So, I mean, you can't ignore inflation.
Right.
So, could the implication in the New Testament be something like purchasing a prostitute, right? Could it have similar implications? Because there are very few times in the Bible where they specifically refer to buying things with silver, and here it's a prostitute.
Okay, so yeah, the entire... so he basically... adds up the values of not only the silver but the rest of it in at the time, and he concludes that the entire price for the woman thus amounted to about 30 shekels. That would equal the price of a slave according to Exodus 21:32 and Leviticus 27:4. Hosea does not say to whom he paid the price nor where the woman lived. She could have been either someone's personal slave or a temple prostitute.
So this is the price of a slave, and later on in the New Testament, we can assume that it's vaguely the same amount of money, same price of a slave, which is an interesting bit and something we'll have to go in more depth on once we get to the New Testament.
Yeah, the amount comprising the purchase price indicates not only the event's historicity, but also suggests that Hosea was not particularly wealthy. What?
Yeah,
I'm not sure about that one.
Well, he's wealthy enough to buy a woman
Well, sure, I get that. But I don't know if that indicates the historicity. Maybe he just knew how much someone cost.
Well,
Maybe that was a lot of money for him.
well, as for him being not particularly wealthy, that would probably make sense given the fact that he has to break his payment into both silver and barley, whereas a more wealthy person would just be able to pay silver outright.
Sure,
Or
yeah.
all gold. Whoa.
And I said unto her, Thou shalt abide for me many days. Thou shalt not play the harlot, and thou shalt not be for another man. So will I also be for thee. So they've entered into a celibate relationship.
So I guess the conclusion here is that this would have been an actual thing that happened.
Maybe. It could be.
Like the buying of his wife.
I mean, people paid dowries and shit.
Sure,
so,
yeah.
It's not that different. For the children of Israel shall abide many days without a king, and without a prince, and without a sacrifice, and without an image, and without an ephod, and without teraphim. Afterward shall the children of Israel return and seek the Lord their God, and David their king, and shall fear the Lord and his goodness in the latter days. That's the end of chapter 3.
Yeah, really not much. Incredibly short.
Hey, there's a 4th chapter.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, and I'm not reading it.
Whoa, you're crazy.
Yeah, you're crazy. So I'm gonna hand over these few things to you. Hopefully, no, I'm pretty sure this will be fairly easy to follow. So here you go. And here's altars. There you go, buddy. And we are hopping into the final chapter of the day. Of course, those went pretty quick because these chapters are much shorter.
Yes.
So yeah, go ahead.
This bit that you're about to get into is going to form an introduction to what follows, setting out in comprehensive terms both accusation and judgment to be spelled out in greater detail in the following chapters. So you're about to enter a strange world.
Yeah, so this is part 1 of like the next section.
Yes. But the marriage section is done with.
Yeah. Hear the word of the Lord, O children of Israel. For the Lord has a controversy with the inhabitants of the land. There is no faithfulness or steadfast love and no knowledge of God in the land.
So this controversy is a legalistic term. Right.
Okay, so this is, kind of establishing judgment here.
Mm-hmm.
There is swearing, lying, murder, stealing, and committing adultery.
Did you read the second half of that verse? There's no truth and there's no trust.
There's no faithfulness or steadfast love. That's what I read. And no knowledge of God in the land.
Oh, that's different here. So it says in Alter's version, there is no truth and there is no trust and there is no knowledge of the Lord in the land.
So it's close, I think. I think the same ideas, but just different scope, I guess.
It often employs loyalty in a covenant or relationship.
Sure. Yeah, so there's swearing, lying, murder, stealing, and committing adultery. They break all bounds, and bloodshed follows bloodshed. Therefore, the land mourns, and all who dwell in it languish, and also the beasts of the field and the birds of the heavens, and even the fish of the sea are taken away. So we've definitely seen plenty throughout Hosea so far, and a few times actually. We've seen the beasts of the field and the birds of the heavens, but it's interesting that there is the addition of the fish of the sea here.
Mm-hmm. And while it doesn't exactly follow the Decalogue,
Right.
there are some arguments that it follows it closely enough that it argues for the pre-existence of the Decalogue in the area. 3, possibly 4 of the 10 Commandments are included. thus reinforcing arguments for the existence of the Decalogue at an earlier date.
Interesting. Therefore, I just read that verse 3. So we'll get to verse 4. Yet let no one contend, and let none accuse. For with you is my contention, O priest. You shall stumble by day. The prophet also shall stumble with you by night. The prophet also shall stumble. Okay, his own prophet of this other faith, right? With you by night, and I will destroy your mother.
Whoa.
Yeah. Probably the land that they're living in.
Yeah. Desert. Destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
My people.
What verse is that?
That was verse 5.
Verse 5. Like Amaziah, the high priest of Bethel, Hosea knows no prophets who carried out official duties in the sanctuary in the northern kingdom. In the Jerusalem temple, however, prophets stood side by side with the priests as cultic personnel. Hence, it was apparently important to the Judaic traditions to attest that Hosea's words also applied to Jeremiah's opponents and their successors.
My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, because you have rejected knowledge. I reject you from being a priest to me, and since you have forgotten the law of your God, I will also forget your children. The more they increased, the more they sinned against me. I will change their glory into shame. They feed on the sin of my people. They are greedy for their iniquity. And it shall be like people, like priests, I will punish them for their ways and repay them for their deeds.
So now we've turned from the priests to the people.
They shall eat, but not be satisfied. They shall play the whore, but not multiply, because they have forsaken the Lord, to cherish whoredom, wine, and new wine, which take away the understanding. New wine. Is there a different translation for that?
And a new wine that takes away the mind. I don't know.
Wait, hold on. Okay, so for me, that was...
Also, Alter translates part that you already read as, you said, play the whore but not be satisfied. It says here, play the whore yet not burst bonds.
I had but not multiply, but...
yeah, but...
So there was...
Where is that?
Verse 11.
About
So
the wine. So in verse 11...
Yeah, so there's to cherish whoredom, wine, and new wine.
New wine. So, I mean, a new wine would be an unaged wine or just grape juice, right?
Mm-hmm.
If new wine alone was...
Is that a special kind of wine, or is that just fresh wine? In which case, I mean, why are they making that
Kohler's
distinction?
explanation is that it's an archaic word for wine, but can hardly be demonstrated from the book of Hosea. Hosea not only knows the word, but as drink clearly distinguishes it from other terms for wine, which often occurs with grain and olive oil as a natural product of the harvest and wine press. This usage is by no means restricted to formulaic phrases. Thus, in contrast to wine, Hosea understands this as either as juice of the grape or as fresh must stored in the wine vat. The derivation from the word from the root to tread, to press, confirms its meaning as unfermented, freshly pressed grape juice in distinction to wine, which is fermented and ready for consumption.
Gotcha. Interesting that they added that. My people inquire of a piece of wood, and their walking staff gives them oracles. For a spirit of whoredom has led them astray, and they have left their God to play the whore.
So this piece of wood...
I'm guessing it's an idol.
Okay.
And their walking staff gives them oracles.
This is kind of lengthy, but...
I'm guessing it's an idol. And that's kind of like a jab.
It said the people, according to the customs of Baal worship, wail and gash themselves instead of calling upon Yahweh from the heart. Similarly, in verse 12, the outcome of their greed for the harvest is the Canaanite practice of visiting oracles. Hosea's choice of words ironically expresses the irritability of the confused people, which was characterized beforehand. Yahweh's people seek answers from its wood and its staff. This means to consult oracles. Speechless wood is expected to give information, and a lifeless staff to proclaim. For instance, concerning the land's cultivation and the prospects of the harvest. Because of Hosea's demythologizing of the Canaanite cultic objects, it is impossible to say whether wood means the Asherah, the cultic pole that was set up next to the altar, or the divine image similar to the teraphim, or a tree which gives oracles. It is equally difficult to decide whether the staff means the small Asherah, or the Urim and Thummim that are part of the ephod, or whether it means the staves of Rabdomancy.
What?
Rabdomancy.
I've never heard that word in my life.
Yes, Google that.
I am. Rabdomancy?
RHABD omancy.
Dowsing with a rock or stick.
Oh, that's pretty simple. In any case, with the suffixes its wood and its staff, the Hosea sharply attacks the use of these oracles as signs of Israel's willful apostasy from Yahweh.
Yeah, I mean, definitely apostasy in some sense, right? They sacrifice on top of the mountains and burn offerings on the hills. Those sound an awful lot like high places to me.
Uh-oh. Don't you be doing things with those.
And at the exact right places too, under oak, poplar, and terebinth, because their shade is good. Therefore your daughters play the whore, and your brides commit adultery.
So
this is describing worship at the high places, and you usually had like a tree there or a stone.
The trees suggest worship of nature gods, often accompanied by fertility rites, hence the invocation of the whoring daughters.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense, actually. I will not punish your daughters when they play the whore, nor your brides when they commit adultery. For the men themselves go aside with prostitutes and sacrifice with cult prostitutes, and a people without understanding shall come to ruin. You know, if he's saying that this is going to happen to them on their own, why is he actually going to do it anyways? Even though he says that he's not going to here.
It's God.
Right, if we try to look at it as a consistent character through. Okay, it looks like we reconnected.
I don't know what happened.
I think we're still going, right?
We didn't drop any frames.
It appears we're still going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good.
That's super weird. I've never had that happen.
Yeah, we just kind of disconnected for a little bit.
A second.
Yeah, not very long. So hopefully you guys didn't miss much. But just to kind of bounce it back quick.
Look, let's talk about some sex rights, all right? Herodotus says that the foulest Babylonian custom is that which compels every woman of the land once in her life to sit in the temple of Aphrodite and have intercourse with some stranger. Many women who are rich and proud and disdain to consort with the rest drive to the temple in covered carriages drawn by teams, and there stand with a great retinue of attendants. But most sit down in the sacred plot of Aphrodite with crowns of cord, not corn, on their heads. There is a great multitude of women coming and going. Passages marked by a line run every way through the crowd, by which the stranger men pass and make their choice. When a woman has once taken her place, there she goes, not away to her home before some stranger has cast money into her lap and had intercourse with her outside the temple. But while he casts the money, he must say, I demand thee in the name of Mylida, that is the Assyrian name for Aphrodite. It matters not what be the sum of the money, the woman will never refuse, for that were a sin, the money being by this act made sacred.
So she follows the first man who casts it and rejects none. After their intercourse, she has made herself holy in the goddess's sight and goes away to her home. And thereafter there is no bribe, however great, that will get her. So then the women that are comely and have long to wait because they cannot fulfill the law. The women that are fair and tall are soon free to depart, but the uncomely have long to wait because they cannot fulfill the law. For some of them remain for 3 years or 4. There is a custom like to this in some parts of Cyprus. So you get some detail about some sex cults.
Love sex cults.
Imagine having to sit in a place for 3 or 4 years because nobody wants to fuck you.
I can imagine.
Yeah. Chris can just imagine it. Though you play the whore, O Israel, let not Judah become guilty. Enter not into Gilgal, nor go up to Bethaven. So Bethaven.
Yes, Gilgal is a well-known cultic site in the north near the Jordan. Bethaven, which means house of sin, is probably not the actual place name, but a polemic substitution for Bethel, one of the 2 principal cultic sites of the northern kingdom.
Yeah. I believe I covered that in the... I covered that in some video. I think that was also in the Golden Calf one. I think. And swear not, as the Lord lives. Like a stubborn heifer, Israel is stubborn. Can the Lord now feed them like a lamb in a broad pasture? Ephraim is joined to idols. Leave him alone. Leave Ephraim alone.
Leave it alone. You're lucky it ever performed for you bastards.
When their drink...
this is a little obscure, but it probably means that since Ephraim is so addicted to idolatry, there's no point trying to rebuke or dissuade him.
Yeah. When their drink is gone, they give themselves to whoring. Their rulers dearly love shame. Oh, okay, so I'm guessing that, this whole loving shame thing. So if someone likes doing something that is traditionally seen as embarrassing, this would be someone going like, oh, you just love shame. I'm guessing it's like that.
They love the disgrace.
Oh, yeah. A wind has wrapped them in its wings, and they shall be ashamed because of their sacrifices.
So the wind will carry off the profligate drunkards and fornicators. This is an image similar to the one in Psalm 1, where the wicked are borne off like chaff. But the notion here of being bundled in the wings of the wind evokes the helpless passivity of the practitioners of vice, carried away to their destruction.
Yeah, that was a weird one. Wings of the wind.
Yes. It's like a whirlwind.
Yeah. I guess it's very, very powerful. Either way, that's actually the end of the chapter and the end of the reading for today. If you guys enjoyed the stream, make sure to drop a like, subscribe if you haven't, because it really does help. It helps with the algorithm, of course. It helps with viewer engagement, basically. The more likes, the more engagement there is, the more pops up in suggested feeds.
So what did you think of today's reading?
Not bad.
Not bad.
I mean, evil, but not bad.
Evil, but it was a good read.
Yeah, it was a good read.
Like that Libris Mortis, it's like, man, that book is so evil, but what a good read.
So there's some interesting context that this would add to ancient Israel, and there is the imagery is. It can definitely be out there. That thing about there was the implication of beating a wife.
Heavily the implication of beating a wife. You know what? It reminds me of Brother Jed.
Oh. Yeah, Brother Jed it does. Yes, Brother Jed. Okay, so
you would love Hosea.
I'm sure he's familiar with
I'm
those
sure he
things.
is, yeah.
For sure.
So Brother Jed, he goes around like the U.S., right? I'm pretty sure he's not just a local guy.
He does live locally, but he went everywhere, at least when we were going to college there for a while.
Yeah, he goes around a lot of places, but he's a preacher. He's got this really charismatic personality, and
He has a staff with a Jesus cross on top.
yeah, it's like watching. It's like every single time I see him, I'm very sports entertained.
Yeah.
It's like watching wrestling, that kind of like show business kind of thing to it.
I'm sure there's videos of him on YouTube.
I'm sure there are. Yeah, you can look up Brother Jed.
But he'll like straight up be like, "Oh, you woman of whores. You're not following Jesus."
Yeah, and he does get really, really vivid, very engaging.
Very hellfire and brimstone.
Yeah, it's kind of it's good stuff.
Quite intense, and his wife is also very intense.
Yeah.
There was
It's intense.
this one point where his wife came along and she had like this thing. It was like a stick with another stick across it.
Yeah.
And a bunch of bloody tampons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was like, "You people of Wisconsin with your fornication."
I remember you gave the Heimskir speech to
Yeah,
distract everyone.
I
That was
gave the
great.
Heimskir speech from Skyrim.
Oh, okay. What?
Damn elves.
That's all you remember now.
Yeah. Something Talos.
You'll get there.
Yes, you were so memorized back then. You played too much Skyrim.
That's pretty good. I didn't know that you did that. But yeah, he's a very interesting character. Let's just put it that way. So, I guess if you can picture that fake court scene.
I'm just imagining Hosea as Brother Jed.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm imagining. It's really good stuff, actually. It really helps with visualizing it.
Yeah.
If we had more empathetic characters like Brother Jeb, we could understand the Bible even better.
Let's see. We have a Patreon.
Yep, we got a Patreon. You could be on this show.
You could win a T-shirt. You get video scripts for long form.
You can hang out with us.
You can do that. Yeah, you can hang out with us. Lots of great stuff.
Thank you for the $5 donation.
Thank you
How
again, man.
were Christians and Jews able to distance the flat earth ideology of the Bible? Almost no Christian said this.
I said this too. Never heard about it.
Okay, so the
So
I don't know.
Here's the thing. The Bible.
Very clearly supports a flat earth.
Well, no. Here's the thing. I don't think it necessarily like teaches one. It's really like underlying. There are
Like, it doesn't say outright, "And lo, ye shall know that the earth is flat."
Yeah.
But it says several things that
Right.
support the conclusion that
Absolutely.
the earth is flat.
So the ancient Near Eastern cosmology, cosmology, ancient Near Eastern cosmic geography, I don't know, would be a flat Earth. So
they believed that it was flat, that it was square, that it had four corners, that
There
those
was-
corners had pillars.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And then there were
was
holes or gates in the sides of these walls, basically, of this kind of like terrarium almost.
almost like that. So and then we get like further stuff in Enoch.
Yeah.
But it's unclear exactly how far back each one of those ideas goes.
Right.
Of course, some of them are pretty ancient, right? Because they are. I think that they were really closely resembling like Sumerian texts as well. So the thing is, because it's so underlying, like the circle of the earth kind of thing, it can be interpreted in different ways because it's not really that explicit.
Yeah, it's like breathing, right? There are certain points in the Bible where breathing is mentioned, but it's never explicitly stated that all human beings breathe the entire duration of their life.
Sure, I guess.
Right? That's just taken for granted.
Yeah, let's just take a break right now and not breathe for a bit.
Well, I mean, the point being that there's certain things that would be so pervasive throughout the world that they wouldn't think that you would have to write it down
Yeah.
explicitly.
Yeah. So by the time that we, were very, very confident that the Earth is not flat, they were like, okay, yeah, well, this fits.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
But also, like, it depends on which church tradition you're talking about, right? Because there are Christians out there who still believe that the Bible is literally true. That means that there are corners of the earth and that there are pillars on which those corners rest. But there are other ones. Like if you take the Catholic Church, for example, the Catholic Church funds and engages in a whole shitload of scientific endeavors. Like they have observatories, right? So it depends on the church. It depends on the tradition. Probably among Judaism, people don't take the flat earth seriously because most Jews are not practicing Jews.
well, there is that one, and also because modern Judaism is so different in comparison to like ancient Israelite religion.
Right. Modern Judaism is almost nothing like what's written in the Bible.
Yeah. It's so loosely connected. It's actually like a little infuriating to me.
Yeah.
Because like, okay, like while like it's all based on like rabbinical teachings and stuff. That's the primary thing for it. And even though the rabbis were interpreting and reinterpreting and arguing over biblical texts, it stemmed off very differently. So it's not a religion of the Torah. Even.
Just consider how important of a role animal sacrifice played in the Bible. There is no animal sacrifice present in modern Judaism or Christianity, but it is fundamental. It's written about over and over and over and over again.
But that has to be at the temple, though.
Yeah, but prior to it being at the temple, they had sacrifices that were outside of the temple, right?
Yeah.
Right. The binding of Isaac.
While the temple was built, I don't know. You could see this is like what rabbis were arguing about, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, right. But
like, did it really count? Like after before the temple was built, sure, but after, then can we really? It's like.
And you know what? Christians are a little more into the monarchy idea, I think, than Jews. I've not heard a single Jew in my life like pining for a return to the Davidic monarchy.
Whoa, yeah.
It's just not something that you hear.
I don't know about the monarchy necessarily, but you do get a lot of Zionists in Israel, that is.
Right. But they're
less so here.
Yeah, most of the Jews that I know are anti-Zionists.
Yeah, me too. At least here in this area
And the
specifically,
US,
yeah, like they're way more liberal about it.
Yeah.
But you still get people like that. Like my grandparents, for example, the older generation is more of that. Is more like that.
Right. But
where they are actually in support of killing the families of terrorists, not just the terrorists that we're talking about, the families, like
well, otherwise the families will hold something
like
against
their
you.
Kids and stuff. Like that's what they support because they're
super villains.
No, because they're just fostering this culture of evil or whatever. And I'm like, okay, if you kill innocent people, that's just gonna make it worse.
Yeah, but I mean, you look at the Christian traditions, and whenever they talk about the eschatology stuff, right? They always talk about like this millennial kingdom and like after this tribulation and everything.
Well, the thing is
they're into it. They want the kingdom to happen, right?
Yeah. They do, because that's like the end goal, right? But the thing about eschatology is that, I mean, yeah, it's been everything that has been written about like the end times, even resembling it, has been interpreted in so many different ways, and that's where you get all those calculations from, and That is a big topic.
And without, every single time, without exception, that they have these big calculations, the end times come around, and then they're like, oh, well, that was just a miscalculation. It's actually like 3 years from now.
Yeah.
Either way.
It's always a miscalculation. Hey, you know what? We talked about our Patreon. We also have a wish list.
Yeah, it's full of books.
Yeah, lots of books on there. You could add books to this table, or you could get us some books that we can use as sources in long-form videos. Let's see, what else is there?
We have a Teespring,
Yes.
or just a spring, which you can see through the pinned merchandise that is about to be put up. We got a new shirt. He is risen. Get it?
Pretty good one.
Get it? Do you understand the pun?
It's a science joke.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks.
You're welcome. So yeah, you could get that. Oops. So
You can send your Lawrence diss tracks.
that would be cool. Lawrence diss tracks. Always want those.
at gmail.com.
Yep, absolutely. So I think that's all the shilling we had to do. Facebook and Twitter, free to follow us on those platforms. Make sure to share with everybody you know that's in prison.
Yep. And
we will see you on Friday and then Sunday.
Friday,
we will
and
be
then
reading
Sunday,
books.
and then Friday,
We read
and then
books
Sunday.
on